Did you ever get the, the, no. It's plugged in.
Good afternoon, everybody. Are we all ready for a second seminar? Yes, no, maybe, possibly? Yeah. Okay, cool. Hey, awesome, awesome. Well, my name is Trinity, and I just want to welcome you to this seminar. I would like to remind everybody that there is no recording of any of the sessions. You can take photos of all the screens, but please don't video them. They will be allowed later. And then, like they said earlier, children are allowed, and even children at heart are allowed. But if you get a little disruptive, we do ask that you please move everybody outside. Don't worry, I'm a child at heart, so I will try to restrain myself. It's okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yes, so I know this is part 2 of the Filmmaker's Frontier for AI. So I would like to introduce Mr. Richard Goforth to you real quick before we get started here. He is a filmmaker entrepreneur with a new AI production company called Subverum, I believe is correct. He produced the first AI narrative short film to achieve full environment and character consistency, which I think is pretty impressive, actually. Which I know nothing about AI, but it sounded really cool, so I'm going to say that it's cool. All right, so without further ado, please welcome Mr. Richard Goforth.
Could you see about having me turn off the house lights when I play the short in the back? All right. Thank you all for coming. This is my second talk, so if you're here, and especially if you're here after the last talk, then you know you're coming back for pain. So this is the fun talk where we're going into all of the advanced AI workflows, or the basics first, and then we'll go into some of the advanced stuff later. And the idea here is that you'll come out of this knowing more specifically how to operationalize AI into what you're doing, whether it be film production or maybe even other tasks that you would have as a business owner. So, and it basically goes through all of those basics. So. I'm not going to give an introduction. I just got a wonderful one from Trinity, but I will say that a little bit about what I've done in the past. So I started off in music. I did music production, went to scoring, and then started doing some more film stuff when I got towards college. And in particular, of course, was working with AI tools since their inception, since they were pretty, really bad. And so and then after that, I worked at my college as a video producer for a little while, and then really invested now full-time into doing, full-time plus being a student, into doing my current business, Subverum. Where I'm a production company, I do videos it's mostly client work. I do videos as production assets for studios that are looking for funding for upcoming releases or VFX work and things like that. So the first thing I'm going to show you, just to kind of give you a preview of what some of this stuff can do, is a little short that I made this week, actually, before CWVFF, before the festival. And it's just a little bit of explanation on this. And if we could get the house lights off at some point when I start to play this, that would be awesome. is this is a, I don't know, are any of you in this room familiar with Tron in any of its forms? Excellent, okay. Have any of you seen Tron Legacy, the movie Tron Legacy? Okay, we got a few, okay, great. So Tron Legacy I'm a huge, huge fan of Tron Legacy. I always have been. Stylistically, I think it's an absolutely gorgeous movie. And ever since I was a kid, I was looking forward to a sequel of that movie. And a sequel did come out, actually, just recently. It's called Tron Ares. But at least for me, and sort of what I had imagined since I was a kid, it was a little bit disappointing. I'm sure we've all experienced that to some extent with a sequel to a movie that we loved. So this project is sort of just something I wanted to do for fun. It's not for a client. I'm not making money off of it, and that's maybe important because it's also like you'll see some like real actor likenesses in it, and so I'm definitely not making money off of this or anything like that. But it's a fun project, and I think you all will like it, and it does a good job of illustrating some of the power of the tools that I'm about to show you. I think if we've got audio back there, I don't know if we have the audio hooked up on this, but great. Oh, that's actually my bad. Give me 1 second, everybody. I forgot to switch the input. All right. I'm playing the audio.
What if...
That's good. The house lights are still on, but this is a lot better. The audio is playing.
What if Tron Ares was actually good?
While we're looking at that, I'll go ahead and skip to the next slide, and we'll talk about this for just a second. This is something we can talk about without watching that. So these are, as we begin to go into using some of the tools that we'll talk about, it's important to be aware of these. These are a few softwares that I'd recommend you use to build out these projects. Now, I don't use all of these softwares. I have used all of these softwares, but I don't use all of these. And that's partially because right now there aren't any really great software solutions for what I'm going to be talking about. And that's important because as we get to the end of the talk, I'm also going to show you guys a software that I've been building out that solves a lot of the creative problems that I've encountered using these softwares. So the one I'd recommend the most is Replicate. That is the API provider that provides the models to most other softwares. So like even I think a couple of the ones on here get their models from from Replicate. But then a couple of these that are notable, Adobe Firefly has a pretty good board system, which is pretty useful, and they do allow you to generate within that board system. Higgsfield is right now the most popular of all of the tool providers. They also kind of do these cool little preset things. Some of them are kind of gimmicky. I talked about that last time, but this is just the general lay of the land. How are we doing back there? Should I keep going? Okay, well, let's try it. Here we go, it's playing.
What if Tron Ares...
Okay, I'm going to restart it. If we could just get the volume up a little bit, that'd be great.
What if Tron Ares was actually good?
You asked for me?
We've decided to reorganize the cast a little.
Tron, when do you think you come?
No program has ever really gone. Only corrupted.
Using the old system, we now have a stable environment for the Tron 2 build. It is the perfection of what your father started.
A new digital frontier.
Why do you keep going in there alone?
I'm just working on the system.
I can't let that world go. I can't let him go.
Your dad? Or Clue?
We have a problem.
Do you think this is a game?
have to show you something. We need some way to establish order.
We need Tron.
All right. So that's that little project. Yeah, so I made that project, and that was something I did just as a demo for what we're doing here today. And the incredible thing is that this just gives you a glimpse at what's possible. And this was a project, without going into further detail, this is a project that could have been refined a lot more. So that's how it always is. You're creative; it can always be better. But it gives you an idea of where we're going. So the first thing I want to talk about are a couple models to be particularly aware of. So for the purposes of most of the things we're going to be encountering in this talk, the image model that we're using is Nano Banana. This is, when Nano Banana came out, it was revolutionary. And the reason it was revolutionary was that it was the first model that sort of fundamentally changed the way that image models respond to text inputs. And it allowed you to have a way greater degree of guidance through the prompting process. So this allows you, even with just and then also it can take image inputs and it treats image inputs. It treats all inputs, including all of its image inputs, as one cohesive prompt, which allows you to upload images. And then with a text prompt, refer to those images and explain what you want changed or how you want those images to guide the generation process. So that's all extremely powerful. It's almost like you're showing like an artist a picture, and then you're telling them how you want to edit the picture and things like that. And so it allows you to get very, very particular about what you want in the image generation process. The second tool that we'll be talking that you should be aware of for the purposes of the demonstration today is Kling 3.0. This is the best video model right now that's out. Some of you may have heard of this thing called Seedance 2. If you're in the AI space, that is coming out soon. It isn't out yet. I haven't actually had a chance to get my hands on it yet, or haven't had a chance to use it yet. And so I can't recommend it, but I can recommend Kling 3.0. So what we talked about last time in my first talk was a little bit about process at a very high level. So what we talked about was how we're breaking down the production process into a sort of a new AI-guided process. And this AI-guided process essentially replaces the production component. So rather than shooting anything in camera, you're able to completely replace that with a new creative production process. And we talked a little bit about what that process looks like and why it's important at a high level. And I guess a couple things here to talk about are, first, that as you use AI tools, you're going to discover a couple things. It is the way that you get the AI tool to conform to the creative order that you're trying to impose is through lots and lots of iteration. So you're going to have to guide it through iteration a lot. And what I mean by that is let's say that you just have a text prompt. You're starting with a text prompt and you're trying to get an image output that you like. You put in your text prompt. The first image you're going to get is not going to be what you want. Okay, so you have to try it lots and lots and lots of times, or you're going to have to try it and then refine your prompt to get something closer to what you want. And then you get an output, refine, output, and that iterative process, you do that over and over, and you're going to get closer and closer to what you want. Eventually, you're going to get to something very close to what you want, but it's never going to be exactly what you want. And then that's where you can start to move on to some of the processes we'll talk about later. But so like this is just an example. Like these photos, like this is on the low end of like potential iterations that you'd go through. But this was the amount of iterations I went through to get this one photo or this one image that we saw at the beginning of the film. And even this image was edited even after the image outputs. So. And this brings me into an important point, which is the difference between a process which is fundamentally an automating process where you're just automating a task to get a result, and a creative process. So in AI production, when you encounter AI tools, there's use cases that really only want to use AI to automate processes. So if you want to, for example, create short form content for your YouTube channel or something, and the short form content doesn't need to be good. It can be really bad. It just needs to exist. And you just want to be able to post tons of it. Okay, that's something that right now people are like, please give us solutions to automate that process. And AI is being used that way right now. Like, I'm sure you guys are using social media. I'm sure you've seen AI stuff when you're scrolling or whatever. And that is a really common task that AI is being used for. It is very powerful for that. But the problem is automation gives you a lot less creative ability. So you can automate certain processes you can automate certain processes within your creative process, but fundamentally automation isn't, once you've created an automation, you're no longer creating. So the output of that automated process is just determined by the process that you've created itself. So I put this up. Right now, a couple of things you should be aware of for automation. These are just a couple, but CumpyUI and N8N are well known for allowing you to automate AI processes. So CumpyUI is particularly useful for image and video models and anything in between. N8N is used for virtually anything. So that brings me, so that's the difference between using AI to automate processes to get certain tasks done, and just and the creative process. And the creative process is always more intentional. Okay, so when you're script writing, you can't ever use AI to write a full script. I mean, and I don't think anybody here would really want to, because you actually are typically, if you're at a festival like this, it's because you actually have stories you want to tell, or at least you have some semblance of a story you want to tell, even if you haven't worked it out fully. So you never really want to have a script completely written by AI. So what you really want, again, is to guide that process and use tools that are going to help you do that. And so an example of this is Sudowrite. I have that tool up there. I don't have any examples of it in this slideshow, but it's something you could take a look at. It's great at sort of breaking down the creative process, and the AI assistance there is more meant to give you ideas and sort of embellish what you already have, rather than to sort of completely replace or write from the ground up. So again, if we're thinking about creatively, how do I create a production, it still fundamentally goes back to the slide I had a minute ago of pre-production, production, post-production, except that we're no longer shooting things in camera. So we're still in pre-production, okay? We have a script. Now you need a shot list. So once you get to the AI generation process, you're not creating randomly. You're creating shots that you think are going to tell your story. That means that you still need to have a sense of like what works well. Like how do you have to think in the mind of a DP, like what angle is going to capture this emotion, that's going to capture this moment well. And that's an art in itself. And so you may not need a shot list. You can maybe do that without creating a full list, but that's still a part of the process. And so in my projects, I've actually created a shot list. So this was, all the things you're seeing in here are things I've made. Like this is a shot list that I created for the 6-minute short film that I showed a clip of yesterday. That this was the script for that, and this was an automation that I did for an animation pipeline that I was working on. So now we finally can, now that we've done the pre-production and we're moving on, now we're thinking about, okay, well, what are ways that and a lot of this is still kind of review from last time, so we'll get to some of the newer stuff very soon. But then we get to where can AI really be used that really is going to propel your work. And so now we get to a really fundamental step where it's going to be style curation, or just the curative process in general. You're going to be getting lots and lots of, think of it as like data, essentially, that you're going to use to ground and guide your outputs in the generative process. So these are styles that I use to guide a project that I worked on. I created a number of styles, and I settled on these two because I like these the most, and I used these in the generative process to guide the style throughout the whole thing, which created a consistent style across the entire project. Okay, so next is character design. So again, this is we're going to be going into here in a second is thinking about how are you going to get consistent characters in a video. So if you're using base models like Midjourney, we've encountered Midjourney up here in the top left. If you're using base models like Midjourney, if you're not inputting a character reference, you're just going to get a slew of unrelated images, okay? And if they're unrelated, then that means they're not going to have the same objects, not going to have the same characters, and that's a problem. And that, for a very long time, made it impossible to even make movies, because to make a movie, you need to have consistent characters. You have to tell a story of this character, right? And so until even just months ago, that wasn't really possible. It wasn't easy. Now it's a lot easier. And so one of the best ways you do that is with something called character sheets. And so what you can do using Nano Banana 2 up there is you can create, I mentioned Midjourney because I used Midjourney to make the ones on the right, and then I used a pipeline in the automated process I was talking about earlier to build out different angles of that character. But the one on the left is the one I'm talking about right now. And you can do this relatively easily in a tool like Nano Banana 2. And that's the tool that we talked about earlier. So now we're going to talk about what's like the most fundamental breakdown of process here. Like if I went out right now and I wanted to make something, you've given me some of the tools, you've told me some of this theory, how do I actually do it? So it starts off with text to image. So you give a prompt and you get an output, okay? So, and that shot might look a little bit familiar. It's because it was an early step in the process of generating one of the shots in the film you saw. But you see, like, this is not what I wanted, okay? And it doesn't really matter. I can do it as many times as I want. I'm never gonna get an output that's exactly what I was looking for. So now this is pretty close, okay? When I was imagining it, this is really close to what I was wanting. And so, that process comes after just working with this prompt a lot. And don't screenshot this prompt. This is not a particularly good prompt. In fact, it's more just to give you an idea of what the process looks like. We can talk about prompting out later outside if you want me to give you some tips there. But image to image. So the next process is, okay, well, I have this image, but it's not quite right. I need to get it the extra 10% or the extra 20% or whatever it is. And that process is primarily editing, and you're using models to do that editing. So again, Nano Banana. Nano Banana does editing, because remember, it takes image inputs and text inputs. So you can use that to go from this to what I was really looking for and imagining, which is that. And you can do those kind of edits on anything. So you can do this to the nth degree. If you want to get extremely precise on what you're looking for, you can do that. And so it's very, very powerful. And in my original project that I showed a clip of yesterday, this was before Nano Banana, so I was using much cruder tools. But I mean, I was doing that to change just like objects in the room. Like I had the scene in my mind, and it was like this wardrobe, or this cabinet doesn't look the way I'd imagined, so I'm gonna change that. Or this painting on the wall, like I was really hoping it'd be a painting from this like in this style, and so then I would change out the painting. You can do that like for everything. And so it really just matters, like if you have a team, if you're working on a larger production and you have a team and you have a larger budget, that's what you do. You actually go through and it's almost like you're doing set design if you're building out an environment. Or, and by the way, we'll talk a little bit later about how you can create environments for your scenes, but this just gives you a sense. Okay. Now we're moving on to the last step. So we're talking about making movies here, okay? You can't make movies with images. You make movies with images stitched together. So that right there is the product of an image-to-video process. So you're taking this image and you're animating this image to create a video. This is, believe it or not, this is the easy part. This is the part that makes things look really cool. This is actually, of everything we just went over, this is the easy part. The creative process really comes through in the image portion of the pipeline. So that's because you iterate faster, you can get more particular on your edits, and this is just animating that image. So, and one important note here is this video, right? This was generated in Kling 3.0. This video took maybe 8 minutes to generate on like the highest subscription you can get. And the reason that's relevant to you all is because if this video didn't look good, then you'd have to generate again, and that's another 8 minutes. And believe it or this is, I mean, and these aren't extremely cheap. Like these are maybe $1.50 per generation. So for some of the projects I've worked on, I'm averaging like 50 generations per. Okay, that's 50 8 minutes of waiting for a generation, and then it's also, depending on the length of the video, that'll change the pricing a little bit. But it's like, you can get anywhere, sometimes even between $50 to $100 just on one shot. And that's more expensive projects. Like that's not. It's all about where do you stop in the refining process. But so just to give you a lay of the land, like this process is easy because it doesn't require as much creative input and refining, but it does mean that it often is very difficult to finally get the shot that you're looking for. So we're going to go on. So this is that process that you just saw, that sort of basic three-step process, the text to image, image to image, and video to image. Image to video. That three-step process, which is at least right now the main process that people use, that gets you one shot, okay? But now you have to do that for all your shots. So this is, again, that project I'm referring to that we played a minute of last time. This is, there were 76 shots in that film, and I did that process for all 76 shots. Okay, so now we're talking about character consistency more seriously. So I showed you that little still earlier of the character sheets. This is one character sheet that I created with Nano Banana. This is for the film, that little film at the beginning that I just showed you. This is Daft Punk. Anybody familiar with Daft Punk? Are you guys fans? I'm a big fan of Daft Punk. So this is sort of Daft Punk's costume in the movie, in Tron Legacy. And so the idea is that by breaking this down into a character sheet, you can use that to guide your generation process later so that your character looks the same, and it looks the same as these. And the reason I have them in different poses is because if you don't show what it looks like from different poses, then the model doesn't know. Like, it doesn't know. I mean, it doesn't know anything ever, but it's also, it's not going to be able to guess what it looks like. And so, that is really important to understand. Things that are very intuitive to you in the prompting process are not intuitive for the model. So whenever you're getting bad outputs, it's probably a combination of it being stupid and you being stupid and not giving it more information. So it's like an example of this is like, and I think I brought this up last time, but this actually happens even in common experience. You just don't really think about it very much. But if you see a picture of your friend's house on their phone, and then you go to their house, usually your experience of being in the house feels different than it does when you saw the image, right? And it's just because the image doesn't have a lot of information. Like it's just like it's a 2D plane, and you don't have a lot of information to go off of the depth. You don't necessarily know exactly what the camera constraints were, and there's lots of variables that make it kind of difficult to estimate exactly what that room looks like in your imagination. So the way that you make that easier is you just give it more images, okay? You just show more images of the same space. It's like if I saw multiple images of the same house in the interior, I'm going to know better what it looks like. So. And the most obvious example of that, and this is, believe it or not, this actually happens, if you're just not really thinking about when you're prompting these things, is you show an image of the thing that you want to generate, but then you wanted to show it from the back, and then it doesn't give you the output you want, and you're wondering, why is it doing that? Well, then show it from the back, and then it'll give you what you want. So, and I'll show you. So what you do is you then plug in this character sheet to your generative model with a text input, and then you can get something like that, okay? And I didn't include it, but I have the text, the text prompt for that, and that was how I got one of the shots that you saw in the film. And again, this is all Nano Banana. Okay, so now we're going to talk about environment consistency. This is actually a little bit more difficult. Originally, character consistency was more difficult, but environment consistency is fundamentally a more difficult problem, and that's because environments are extremely complex. Characters are very small. And so you can show different angles of a character very easily. It's very difficult to show all of the features of this room. I mean, just like look around. Like there's vents right up there, and that's not going to get captured if I don't have the right camera angle. Like every aspect of this room is actually very detailed, and it's very difficult to capture that unless I literally walk around in the room. Well, what if I could do that? What if I could literally just walk around in the room? And this is an extremely powerful workflow. So this is one of the most mind-boggling things ever. I mean, it honestly, when this first was sort of being discovered, it was blowing my mind. And this was something that I sort of was realizing this is where the industry was going way before the real tools were developed. But this is making use of a technology called Gaussian Splatting, where you're able to, with an image input, you can create a 3D space. And I'm sorry, it's kind of dark. I mean, the lights are kind of washing it out, but what you're seeing right there is you're seeing me explore this 3D space from a 2D image. And the way that it's doing that is through sort of I didn't even include the name of it. This is called World Labs, but it's through a technology called Gaussian Splatting, where it's essentially taking a number of reference images, and then it's guessing what would it look like if I put a camera in the middle of those two different images. And it's like just guessing, what would that look like? And then it builds that out with a really clever technology, and this is very recent. So the real power of this, and it's the house lights that are the main problem, but thanks guys, is the real power of this is that now, rather than have to prompt around to get the certain objects in the room that you can't really actually go to, you can just go to it, and by the way, just to be clear, this doesn't solve the problem of not knowing where the stuff is in the environment. Like, it's not going to know what's behind the couch here, because it can't see it. So you're going to have to fix that kind of thing. But this allows you to get much more precise on your generative process. So here we have an example of taking a wait, is that the right? Yeah. Okay. Good. So. So here we have an example of taking a screenshot in the room. So this is a screenshot. It's the same room, but it's from the other angle. So you can see the couch there. So we're like right here. Our camera's right here, and it's pointing this way. And the thing that's, again, it's very impressive about that is that I can get very precise. If I want to be right, if I want to have that exact angle, I can just make that exact angle in that 3D world. And so then, then I have this picture. Now the problem with this picture is that it's very low quality. I mean, you guys can tell. I mean, like the objects in the scene look very 3D. They look very game-like, and this creates problems because models, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you give it an image that looks like a 3D render, it's going to give you, like Nano Banana is going to give you an image that looks like a 3D render out. There are some ways around this with prompting, but it actually, I mean, sometimes simple things like that actually end up being a really a bottleneck, and they can be very, very difficult to work around because this is maybe not intuitive, but simply telling AI to make you something that looks realistic doesn't usually work. You have to be a lot more particular than that, and so you have to come up with strategies to make that easier. So here's a strategy. So everything that we've seen so far is stuff that people who are sort of really invested in the AI production space know. What we're about to see is something that, and I'm comfortable sharing it because this is, these things are always being discovered, and what I want to stress here is that I'm not giving you a bunch of secrets. Like I'm fast tracking you in the AI production world, but these aren't like secrets. People have learned this stuff, and they're going to continue to. The real challenge is that when you're working with this stuff, what you discover very quickly is that it's a lot harder than you think. It's a lot harder, and it requires just a lot of experience, a lot of working with the models to be able to know what works and what doesn't work. So none of these techniques I'm showing you are bulletproof. You're going to try them, and it's going to fail. And so especially when you're doing productions at scale, you run into problems all the time. Everyone knows this, but if you want to work with this stuff, this is a good place to start. So this is what I'm about to show you. Like I was saying, is a kind of an advanced strategy that can help you. And if nothing else, it'll kind of help you to see kind of the way that these models work behind the scenes. So you can take this image. If I want to make this look more realistic, I can take this image. I'm not using this image yet. I'm using our original image. So on the bottom right, you see our original image. And then from that image, I've generated a normal map, a line art map, or a canny map, and then a depth map. And those three maps, they're all doing different things. So they're all pulling out aspects of the scene that I want to remain, but leaving the stuff I want to leave that I don't care about anymore. And so some of the things that I'm pulling out are, like, of course, the shape of the room. Like the shape of the room and the shape of every object in the room, like all the objects are outlined in the top left. You can see from just the top left, without any of the other slides, you can tell all of the objects in there. On the top right, you may not be able to see all the objects, but you know the depth really easily. The bottom left, I mean, you might have some of that other information, but what the bottom left is designed for is showing you textures and kind of the way that textures are working in the environment. And so taking these three things, you can, I then take this image and I generate these maps, okay? So the bottom right is the kind of image I'm looking for in the output. So remember, like this is the quality I'm looking for in my output image. I did the 3D process, I got this, but this is low quality. So what I do is I run this, I run that image, this past image, I run this through this process to create these images, and then I just give it to, and tell it to fill in the blank. And when I feed this image and this image together and tell it to fill in the blank, then it outputs that in the bottom right. And this is what that result looks like. Hopefully you all can see, but the quality there is staggeringly better. And even just like the objects and the floor and everything, because now what it's doing is it's taking some of the context of our original image and applying it to this image, but with our new direction and angle of the room and all of that. So if that was all a little bit too complicated, I don't blame you. Like I said, this is the sort of the painful nitty-gritty part, but these are really, really powerful production workflows, and this is just one example. I mean, there's lots of stuff like this, and it's all just a part of trying to get as much control over your outputs from the model as possible. And if nothing else, I want you all just to be seeing that it's just extraordinarily impressive that I can generate exactly the shot I wanted. Like that bottom right, when I was exploring the space and I decided I want to get this angle, that's what I wanted, okay? So that's very impressive, and it's very hard to make spaces work. So this kind of environment consistencies, especially, if you'd looked at this a year ago, you would have been blown away. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a different segment of the project. So what we've just looked at are some really impressive aspects of how you can create character consistency and environment consistency and how you can start to actually make some of the shots. But what we still want to go over a little bit, in our just a couple minutes remaining here, are additional enhancements that make the project a lot better. And these are kind of obvious, but like surprisingly, in the AI filmmaking community, people just don't do this stuff, and it makes the projects really bad. You want good sound. Like, sound is 50% of the production. Like, even if you got this cool AI imagery, if you have bad sound, it's like, what was the point of all that? Like, you spent so much work getting cool imagery, and then you dropped the ball on like the thing that's been a lot easier for a long time. So the sound editing, I'll just mention a couple things here which are helpful. Which are AI tools that you can use in your projects. But Adobe Podcast is very useful. Adobe Podcast enhances sound. It doesn't isolate sound only, it also enhances it. So what that means is, and particularly voices. So it means you can upload a sound of you talking in a hallway somewhere, and it's like there's echoes everywhere. You upload it, and the output actually it removes the background. But if you just remove the background, there's lots of tools that remove background. The quality of the tone of your voice is still going to be suffering quite a lot, and part of that's just from artifacting in the process of separating the stems. So what Adobe Podcast does is it enhances the audio, and I have no idea how that works. You can ask them, but I know we're not all a fan of Adobe, but this is a very powerful tool. 11 Labs is another tool that's extremely powerful. They are doing generative audio, and particularly generative audio voices. And that is extremely powerful. Here's an example of this. If you have the consent of the actor in a physical production, you might have a circumstance where you need to get you have a voiceover of an actor over this certain scene, and the take that you thought was good didn't work, and there was somebody it peaked or something. You have to recreate it. Well, 11 Labs can just do that. It's extremely powerful, and definitely recommend having experience with it. And we're not diving deep into that. We just don't have time. But there's a lot of value to be had there. And so the other thing I'll say, so again, just within that same thread, grade your project. Don't just take the AI generation output and be done with it. The AI generations, they're all going to suffer a little bit from having slight deviations in style and color and things like that. So you make it more coherent, and you actually add some you just used your traditional grading skills to actually bring that coherence back to the project. Okay, so at this point in the talk, I have a couple minutes here. We're just going to go through a few slides, and then we'll go to Q&A. These last few slides are demonstrating a software that I have been building out that actually makes this whole process a lot easier. And if you use some of those initial softwares that I outlined at the beginning, what you're going to discover is that they're often not really optimized for the creative process. And I'm just explaining to you as somebody who's used this stuff, and the reason I'm building a software at all is because it was frustrating me to use them. And so it was slowing down my work, and I wanted to make that easier on myself. So we're going to go through those, and then you'll see in the top right of these that they have a QR code, and that QR code will just allow you to scan to sign up for when we announce early access. And you all, if you want to be a part of the software early access, then you can access that through that QR code. And my social media platforms and website are also up there. But so shameless plug. But what we're seeing right here, and this will help to kind of illustrate some of the things I was talking about earlier. This is that storyboard that you guys saw. This goes scene by scene, shot by shot, and allows you to build out an entire project. And it's all organized within each of these single shots. So if I want to work on one of the shots, like shot 1, then I can click shot 1, and all of the assets that are relevant to shot 1, all of the prompts that I created, all of the references that I used, they're all there, and you can just use them. And this is what that looks like. So if I go ahead and just click into one of these, shot 1. So this is a shot that you guys have already seen. You saw some of the iterations from that. This is what that looks like. So this is what we're calling a gen block, and this operates within a gen space. And so you're able to generate shots from this gen block, and it saves your prompt and your references, and you can hop back in here and immediately generate 10 more if you want, and then you can save those references later. And then the other thing the reason this is particularly powerful, and the reason that I've opted to create that particular space is, again, what we talked about earlier. It's iteration. The key to this stuff is iterate and refine. That's over and over and over, and that's how you get exactly what you want. And so this interface allows you to iterate very easily. You generate 4 things very quickly. And then when you go through, you can review them. Is this what I like? Do I like this one? Do I like that one? Do I like this one? And then once you choose one that you really like, then what you can do is you can save it. And so then, and use that as a part of the production later in the process. The last thing I'll show, and this is not a comprehensive show of the platform, that's not the point of this, it's more just to show you the kind of to synthesize what we talked about. This is automation. So the same software allows you to automate things as well. So I'll just restart this just to explain this. So if I click into this gen block, what's actually doing the work of generating this stuff is contained, press play. There we go. It's contained within this gen block. So this gen block actually is an instance of an entire automation pipeline that you can create using nodes. So this first instance is Nano Banana 2. The second instance is also Nano Banana 2. I was just lazy and just picked Nano Banana 2. But you can create automation pipelines within here, and then the outputs are easily iteratable in your iterative space that you already have. And so that creates this really powerful dynamic where you can automate and then iterate quickly on using your automated outputs or your automated inputs. And the reason that this is particularly useful is that again, the way that this works is these operate by gen blocks. So you can add a gen block that has a different automation, right? And the reason that that's powerful is that you can have presets for for all sorts of different automations, and then iterate on those. All right, good. So as I conclude here, I think this gives you a sense of some of both the basic process of what you want to do to build these kinds of projects, and then also kind of gave you a little bit of a glimpse into some of the advanced workflows that you encounter. And just to reiterate, this stuff is not easy, so I encourage you all to try it and to really take it seriously, because this is extremely powerful, but also not to be discouraged when you encounter roadblocks, because you're going to encounter roadblocks here and there. So I think what we're going to go ahead and move on to is the Q&A, and I thank you all again for listening to me talk, and hope that you learned something from this, and I also hope that if you'll stop me outside if you have any other questions. I think, Trinity, if you want to maybe walk around with the mic, yeah, then we can start to go for questions. So for now, until she's here, we can go ahead and do questions. If anybody has a question, we'll start going for it. And we'll go right here.
I had a quick question on how do we avoid copyright issues if I get an image and I want to make something out of that image, but I can take the picture. So is it that you try as much as possible to make the video not look like the image? Is that how I would avoid like copyright issues?
Yeah. So this question came up in my last talk as well. And the first thing that I'd say is I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you the ins and outs of this stuff. We had a couple of people, including the gentleman behind you, Brennan, who have some real knowledge on this stuff. What I will say is from some of the conversations I've had after that talk, and this is sort of intuitive. If you just, the hope is that the law is going to reflect real justice. But what is true is that what's not true is that you made the image, strictly speaking. Like you were certainly causal in the creation of the image, but the model was also. And so you kind of have to figure out, what is absolutely true is that first, it would not have generated the image unless you did something. And two, it wouldn't have generated the image that way unless you told it to generate it that way. So that means that the two things you own there are the most important thing that you were responsible for was the inputs that you gave to have it generate the output. And so as far as I have been, as far as I'm aware and in conversations, what that looks like legally is that you're able to copyright those things. Maybe not even technically the output image, but that doesn't really matter, at least for the purposes of what the kinds of things that we'd be doing here. We'll put it this way, you shouldn't be too concerned. Does that make sense? Great. Any other questions? We'll go here in the corner.
I've been looking into this for a while, but less for...
Here, if you want to hold it just for a second, Trinity's going to bring you the mic so everybody can hear. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I've been looking into AI for a while, but for whatever reason, the attempts at photoreal don't appeal to me as much. Just there's always the little bit of my brain that always notices there's something wrong. So I've been looking more into using it to generate more like, I suppose you could say, cartoon or animated styles, because they have a built-in inherent, your brain kind of disconnects and knows this isn't supposed to be real. Do you know of, or have you seen any work that is focusing more on that side of things, tools that are designed for a more animated or stylistic approach to
Yeah, absolutely. So what I've just presented to you is an attempt to solve the hardest problem. And the nice thing about solving the hardest problem is that usually solving the hardest problem also in turn solves a lot of the easier problems. So this exact process, everything I just showed you, could be used just to do animation. In fact, it would be virtually identical. You wouldn't have a lot of the same concerns. Like sometimes the environment consistency doesn't matter as much in animation. Like in animation, like the animation is a little more abstract. Like the actual experience of an animation project, is more about is a little bit more abstract than a movie where like a shot and camera movie where it's designed to pull you in as if you were there, and that's not quite as true for animation. And so for that reason, it's a little bit more forgiving if there's kind of inconsistencies and things like that. But yeah, no, the same process applies. Right here, yep.
Yes, you said something that was really interesting. It's kind of a key point for consideration. You said that the product is never precisely what you're looking for, never exactly what you had in mind. So my question is more of a theory question than practical, but do you find yourself more often saying to yourself, well, that's close enough, or more often saying, well, actually, the AI outdid what I had in mind? Excellent.
Yeah, no, this is a great question, and very interesting to think about philosophically. A couple things. First, I think we all know this as artists. You never start a project and imagine it, and it comes out the way you thought it was exactly. It's and the reason for that is that it's impossible. Like it's just not, and it just the world as it exists. There's so many accidental features that are always contributing to the way that a project is made that you'll never have it be exactly determined the way you had it in mind. But that's not a problem. In fact, that's actually the way that artists will often articulate that, especially if you're Bob Ross, is that they're happy accidents. So I think what I would say, your question was more about though. What do you encounter more? You often find yourself thinking like, man, the AI did a good job. Like, I'm happy with that, And this is what I'll say. As a musician, this is something I've encountered quite a lot, where when I'm making music, I'm often just putting myself in situations to experience the music that I'm sort of occasioning, but not in a way that's, but not in as complete a way as if I set out with a perfect vision about what the song I wanted was. So if I'm sitting at a basic example of that is I'm sitting down at a piano and I'm playing I'm riffing on the piano. It is often the case that I'm not going to have in mind a very exact thing I'm trying to make. I may not even have one at all. I'm just kind of playing, and then I just discover it. And when I discover it, I'm like, oh, now I love this, and you're moving, and then you're actually building an artwork, and it kind of was born from this maybe almost more accidental discovery. With AI, it's the exact same thing. So every once in a while, or not even every once in a while, it totally depends on the way you're approaching it. For me personally, I'm very intentional in my projects, so I encounter it less than most, like that kind of thing. There are definitely occasions where I'm like, wow, like actually AI, that might actually be a good idea. But yet, the important thing to notice there is it still takes me taking the creative decision to say, oh, that's what I want. You know what I mean? Like if it weren't for that, then that wouldn't have been the shot that was picked. It still took you thinking to yourself, oh, that is what I want. In the same way that when you play that chord, it's like, oh, that's what I want. I want that chord. And so yeah, like I said, I do it less than most, but it is certainly true that some people, when they're sort of in this process, they just kind of find that they like everything, and they're just like, okay, yeah, and usually if you watch that kind of video, it's bad. That's like, if we watched it, we'd call it AI slop probably. And I think and this is nothing against that person, but they might not want to be in this line of work. It's like they're like that's not what an artist does. And so I think it's important when you're working on AI projects, just because of how powerful the tools are, that you should be aware of that, and you should be intentional about, you should be intentionally intentional. Like you should be really actually thinking about what do I want to make here, and that's just a healthy habit for the creative process on the whole. But yeah, that's a great question, very interesting. And also, like the answer I just gave, there's lots that could be unpacked there, and I'm not, I definitely don't have the last say on that, but that's what I'd say. Great, yeah. Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So first of all, are
Thanks
you real or are you AI? Because you got too much information for one person. So that's the first thing. So we've been working on some hybrid projects, just hobbyist, enthusiast stuff. And it's been more like real people trying to change environments or make visual effects happen around this person. But the problem is the person keeps changing. We can't find continuity between those shots. And so we'll start with one person that we see, and it's like, who is that? Where did that person come from? So is that user error, or are we not there yet? Like, help me.
That's excellent. No, this is great. I'm going to show you, I think I was even hoping that I'd point this out, but I kind of forgot. This is an extremely powerful part of Kling 3.0. So what you're talking about is what I would refer to as coherency. So across video generation, this is true for image generation as well, but across video generation, it often will become incoherent. If you looked at older AI video generations, this is very true. There was another word, essentially the generation would devolve, it would degrade extremely fast. And so you want to maintain coherence across a long portion of the video. And that becomes, and to your point, now it's gotten good enough where the environment, for example, stays coherent. Like the environment's not changing as the video goes on. But the characters do. Like if the character turns around and now looks back at the camera, their face is different. It's like, what in the world? That's a problem. Well, again, it's like, this is cutting edge, everybody. Like this model I'm looking at right now, this came out weeks ago, like 2-3 weeks ago, something like that. And I've had the chance to use it quite a lot now. And one of the revolutionary things, and this is not revolutionary, people have done this before, but I think this one does it the best, is it allows you to append a character reference. This is like a tiny little box here, but this right here, what you're clicking on here, this is a character reference that essentially uses the character sheet that I showed earlier. And with that character sheet, you can generate, or you can basically add that collage to this character reference within the video model. So then that becomes an input into the video model, so the video model kind of knows what the character looks like. So when the character turns around and faces the camera, then they look the same. And that's really, really powerful. But that is a good question, yeah. And I think, again, like, there's only so much you can do in one talk, but there's lots of different models you could use. This is the one I'd recommend. This has most of the features that I would need for the kind of projects that I do. But you are going to run into particular use cases where it's like, man, I really wish I had that. And that's where those more powerful automation tools come to play. Like CumpyUI, like I was mentioning earlier, like I've built a couple CumpyUI pipelines, and the main thing is it's extremely intensive to actually build them. Like building it out for a project would only be something if it's a pretty large-scale, high-budget project. Typically, but if you do that, then you have a lot of power to guide the outputs, because you can get a lot more granular on choosing models that correspond to the kinds of tasks that you're trying to do and things like that. So that's what I would say. Does that make sense? Great.
So in writing or in music, there's been a difference between like the creative building side of things and the editing side of things. Do you find yourself mostly editing? And if so, how do you prevent yourself from getting into that trap of like just constantly editing?
Yeah, and this is not to disagree with you at all, but one of the things I'll just mention on the side is that I would consider with AI in particular, the editing process is almost a creative process. It's kind of hard to know that with just thinking of it, but like there's a lot of times where you're like combining images, like use half of this image and half of that image, and it's like that's an editing process, but it also is kind of a creative process because you're bringing about like an entirely new thing when you do that. But I understand the point of your question, and what I'd say to that is that I think this is not a problem, or this is a question that goes beyond the AI question. I think this is something now I think maybe it's particularly important with AI because you have so much iteration, but it is a universal question, like when is good enough? And I think so many artists will strive to get something perfect, and you'll just never get there. And that's the truth. I mean, you will literally never create something perfect because we're in a fallen world, everybody. That's just the way it is. And you're not going to get to something perfect until we go to heaven. So what I'd say is so you want to iterate until you, like I think everybody has a standard, but like at least for me, you know it when you see it. There are certain things that for me are just unacceptable, and there's a quality that is like, okay, this is good. Like this is it's not perfect, but it's good. And especially if you have experience as a director, that becomes really important because you can't run a team trying to chase perfection because you're wasting everybody's time, you know. I think it's a good question just broadly, and yeah, that's what I'd say to that. I think we have one question over here. I think Trinity, if it's all right with you, we maybe have time for one more.
Yeah, I just wanted to know when you made when you showed the example with that contour map, the depth map, and the normal map, was that simply like a image-to-image prompt that you did?
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a good question. You could do that in two ways. You could actually use a pipeline to generate a real normal map, which, for example, of the maps that you saw, the worst one was the normal map. Normal maps are actually pretty difficult for AI to get right, but it's usually kind of like good enough. And often it depends on the use case, but it's like it's often like, do you really want it to be do you really need all of that texture data? And that's often not really clear. But what I will say is that. So for those were AI generated, you can just ask it for it, like create me a canny version of this image, and it will just output that, and it's good enough, especially for the cannies. It's super, super easy. but also the pipelines to actually make real ones are not that difficult, and there are presets in CumpyUI to do that kind of thing. Awesome. Well, I think that probably is it for us. Feel free to stop me outside, and yeah, it was a thank you for coming to the talk.
Yes. Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Don't forget that our the main session is at 4 o'clock with Eddie Roman. And on your way to the session, you should stop by all the concession stands and check out all the vendor booths as well, because they're all pretty cool from what I've seen. And I've only been here 2 days, and I already like all of them. So check there. Don't forget, Lost and Found is at registration. So if you did happen to lose like your badge or anything, please check there. They probably have it. And yeah, like you said, take all conversations outside because they've got to clean this room up. So awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah, let me just put this up real quick, and I'll be right out there.
I got a question. Did you ever hear
Yes,
that
sir.
song Daft Punk is playing at my house, my LCD sound system?
I don't think so. Oh, wait.
You'd pull it up. It's